SABC have actually parted ways with Ms. Magopeni with effect of today, this afternoon, following a breakdown in relationship after the disciplinary process and being afforded an opportunity to respond to the outcomes of the disciplinary process and failing to do so.
And that of the media fraternity. And the fight against gender-based violence gets a major boost as President Cyril Ramaphosa signs off on 3 new and crucial bills. A dramatic week it has been for Johannesburg and Nelson Mandela metros. We look at the good and the bad the two are telling us about coalition politics. And before we end the show, the liquidators of state-owned airline South African Express respond to allegations that self-interest is stopping them from doing the right thing while scores of workers are starving. All that coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts now. Live from SABC headquarters in Auckland Park, a very good evening to you and welcome to this week's final edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. Thank you for tuning in. The SABC has fired Patiswa Magopeni, Group Executive of News and Current Affairs, with immediate effect. The corporation says there has been a breakdown in the trust relationship between the two parties. Following last month's disciplinary hearing, it was recommended that Magopeni submit mitigating factors before being sanctioned. The corporation says she has not done so and has also failed to distance herself from several remarks she made during the hearing.
SABC have actually parted ways with Ms. Magopeni with effect of today, this afternoon, following a breakdown in relationship after the disciplinary process and being afforded an opportunity to respond to the outcomes of the disciplinary process and failing to do so.
You say that she's been fired for a breakdown in the relations, and according to the letter that has been sent to her a short while ago, it does indicate that there has been a breakdown in relation. But what are some of the specific issues that led to her dismissal?
Look, I think it's common knowledge that the SABC breached a High Court order on the 14th of September last year. After that, the SABC then instituted a disciplinary process against Ms. Magopeni for her alleged role in the negligible role played in the incident. And so following that, there was a very public and very transparent hearing that was actually headed by Advocate Kasim. And that happened on the 17th, the 20th, as well as the 21st of December last year. And the outcomes of that hearing were that Ms. Magopeni was found guilty of misconduct for failure to act appropriately, to take the necessary measures to ensure that the court order was complied with.
Well, here's how one of the unions here at the SABC, BEMAU, has reacted to the news.
We are obviously utterly shocked by the decision of the SABC to fire her. I think it's the first person ever in the history that's been fired because she did not distance herself from heads of argument that was submitted by a lawyer, because that is essentially what she has been fired for. The lawyer in his heads of argument, or her heads of argument, said that the three charges were a farce and it was over hastily. We now know that at least 2 of those charges, in fact, in which she was found not guilty, those were a farce because those charges did not fit. So the process that was followed by the SABC, and I want to make it clear that Magopeni is not a member of the union, but we are concerned about the state of affairs and the disciplinary action and the way that that has been taken against the SABC employee, regardless of that person, whether that person is a member or not.
Media Monitoring Africa has also weighed in. Here's their William Bird.
Very, very sad day for the SABC and for South Africa, you know, and there's certain people that will obviously be rejoicing at the turn of events. And I think that it's really sad precisely because thanks to Patiswa, the senior executive team, her team, and of course the board, they've been able to restore the credibility and independence of the SABC over the last several years. If you look at where it was in 2016, Patiswa came in, she's been able to do an incredible job. So for her tenure at the SABC to end in this particular manner where, you know, it's in this particular circumstance is really, really unfortunate way for things to be going at the SABC.
Well, we're now joined by Sibungalwa from the South African National Editors Forum to hear what they have to say about this developing story. Sibungalwa, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. What does SANEF think of this?
Good evening, Vuyo. We are extremely disappointed by this decision by the SABC to terminate the employment of Ms. Patiswa Magopeni. We had hoped that sanity would prevail and that in the end the SABC would follow the prescripts, or rather the direction of the disciplinary hearing, which was to give a warning to Ms. Magopeni. But obviously we saw this decision that was taken by the chairperson, rather by the CEO. I think also what muddies the waters, Vuyo, is the fact that Ms. Magopeni has an existing complaint against the CEO and the chairperson of the very same board. Now, given that state of affairs, obviously you don't expect that the very same people that she's complaining against would give a fair hearing. And I think that in terms of the rules of natural justice, one would have expected that at the very least that her complaint is perhaps heard and adjudicated before you have a decision taken by the CEO. Because as you would know that Mr. Mxakwe is the CEO of the SABC, and in this instance he is pretty much playing a referee and a player, given the fact that he has a pending complaint against him. So I guess in the optics of her dismissal actually do not look good for the SABC, and I think that it takes the SABC a few steps backwards.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we hope to get her reaction in a moment. But I mean, a lot of people have been talking about how she has, over the past couple of years, helped the SABC regain the SABC newsroom regain credibility that it lost in years gone by. Would that be your position as well?
I think we all know where the SABC comes from. I mean, we come from an era of a sad era of Hlaudi Motsoeneng, who had mismanaged the SABC. And on top of that, we know that the ratings of the SABC in recent months and years have shown that the SABC, when it took a decision to turn around to be an independent and impartial public broadcaster, the results of that are there for everyone to see. It's not even about Patiswa being a member of SANEF or being a colleague. It is about the work that we have seen over the years. And actually having for the longest time, the SABC has been a playground for politicians who could bully.
Okay, Don't know what has happened to that line to Sibungalo. We hope to get him back in a moment. But here's something that people have been talking about over the past hour or so. I hope you are back with us, Sbu. I'm going to play a clip, something that people have been talking about since this story broke over an hour ago or so. Something that the ANC's head of election said when he was talking about their assessment of where things went wrong in the November 1 local government election. Take a listen.
As the head of ANC elections, I went to SABC 2019. And when I arrived there, I met a house full of journalists. And then there was a report that I'm trying to intimidate or do what? All political parties, they discuss with the SABC. They engage with the SABC. But my going to the SABC to engage them and to even discuss practical things around the leader of my party in terms of the election campaign, what is his program, I was seen to be interfering. But you discuss with all political parties. You discuss with the EFF, you discuss with the DA, where is John Steisen's program? Where is Malema's program? You discuss with them. And then you discuss also by ICASA how you're going to cover small political parties. You've got a footprint in this country that is not equal to any independent media in the country. All 11 languages and all of that. So we don't have issues with the SABC. We just had an issue, like I explained to you, but we didn't make an issue in the campaign. We don't blame the SABC. We simply explain it to you that we believe that people's perceptions were sharpened not to go out in numbers and vote. We contributed to that.
Now, that's not the part, of that particular speech that I wanted to us to talk about, because I, too, have no issues with what Fikile Mbalula was saying there, because also, in the years that I was political editor here or elsewhere, we met with, this, you've also done this job before. There's nothing wrong with that. We do that all the time, and as Fikile Mbalula was saying, we do it with all political parties across the political spectrum. Where I had an issue with Fikile Mbalula during that particular briefing was where he said that the SABC actually decampaigned the ANC, was where Fikile Mbalula blamed the IEC for not giving them enough time, yet every other political parties were subjected to the same rules and to the same time table. And one wonders where his comments, as people have been suggesting over the past hour or so, actually played or may have played a role in Patiswa Magopeni's axing.
And I guess it is those kind of comments that actually talk to the kind of leadership and the kind of discipline that Patiswa instilled at the SABC, where politicians could not just ride roughshod over the SABC and expecting and feeling entitled, because you could hear from that interview that press conference that Minister Mbalula felt entitled to the airways of the SABC, and we had a Patiswa who was a bulwark between the SABC's newsroom, SABC's editorial integrity, and politicians who felt entitled to have access to the airwaves. Now, this is part of one of the things that kind of muddies the waters, Vuyo, given the fact that we know that Mr. Mbalula made those comments a day or so. In fact, I think it was on the very day that Ms. Magopeni was charged. That is why, as the South African National Editors Forum, we actually issued a statement to say that while we respect the SABC's right to hold disciplinary hearings against its employees, let that process be an open and a fair process. And yes, eventually that prevailed, and South Africans saw for themselves what happened during that very hearing. And now the fact that we've gotten to this point where the CEO of the SABC has decided to fire Ms. Magopeni when there had been a recommendation that she receives a warning, it kind of leaves a bitter taste in our collective mouths as the editors forum in this country. And also, I think more importantly, the other issue is the fact that we ask ourselves the question, what now of her complaint? Because we know that in as much as she was facing a disciplinary hearing, she had also complained about alleged editorial interference on the part of the CEO and the group chairperson. Now, what then happens to that complaint? Is this perhaps an attempt to shut her up, or will this still be adjudicated? We would want to wait and see, and perhaps that is also our attitude as SANEF, where we say that we'll actually go through get advice as to how we can support Ms. Magopeni over the coming days and weeks.
In fact, we've just received something from her. She is apparently going to challenge what she regards to be a grossly unfair dismissal, and she will do so legally. She believes that the SABC hasn't followed its own processes and procedures in terms of what the SABC's own disciplinary code actually prescribes. Your thoughts, Wu? Or on the back of that?
Yes, Puyo. Now, you and I are not legal people, but I guess that the rules of natural justice have to prevail in this particular matter. And I think that the comments and the arguments that Ms. Magopeni makes are actually valid in a sense that you had a disciplinary hearing that set and was concluded, and then you have the SABC asking her to give reasons in mitigation against to give mitigating factors on a potential sanction. Now, anyone would understand that in terms of whether it's a court case or a disciplinary case, perhaps that's a step that should have been taken before a final ruling was made. As we've seen, anyone who has attended court, they would understand that once there is a finding, the defense and also the prosecutors are given an opportunity to give factors, to give mitigating or aggravating factors, which then help the adjudicator or the presiding officer to make a final determination. So in terms of whether it is procedural of the SABC to request her to do that post facto is something that will be for legal experts to analyze. And I guess if she is challenging it legally, it will also assist us to understand whether the code of the SABC, the disciplinary code of the SABC was followed, and if not, what her recourse would be.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it for now. Thank you very much for your time and your input this evening, Sibungalwa from the South African National Editors Forum, on that story that broke about 2 hours ago when the SABC announced that it had terminated its relationship with the Group Executive of News and Current Affairs, Ms. Patiswa Magopeni. And as we have just told you, she says she is going to challenge this legally because she doesn't believe proper processes were followed. It's a developing story, and we will be keeping you updated across our news platforms. To this story now, which also is a developing one, President Cyril Ramaphosa's office announcing a short while ago that he has accented to 3 crucial bills that everyone believes is going to boost the fight against gender-based violence. He has signed off on 3 new bills, and we are now joined by Ms. Advocate Brenda Madumise, who has been one of the key players who have actually been steering this process over the past few years. Advocate Madumise, thank you very much much for your time this evening. Perhaps, as someone who has, you've been one of the drivers of this process, not only these bills, but this whole campaign, national campaign against gender-based violence. Tell us just how important these three bills are before we touch on what each one of them is about and means.
Thank you, Mr. Mvoko, and good evening to you and to the viewers. Well. A year later, we have these three amendment bills. So remember, these are amendments that
they are not entirely new bills. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead, Advocate.
Yes. So these three bills were amendments to the existing provisions of the relevant acts that were there. So the Domestic Violence Act, the Criminal Law Sexual Offences Related Matters Amendment Act, and the Criminal Laws Amendment Act. So we were amending the existing laws just to ensure that what we have been experiencing and addressing and attending to in the last 2-3 years, we then take care of such in these amendments. They're important in a number of ways. And as you heard me saying, I had a sigh because it has been a long, arduous time that we have spent to get us to this point for the state to understand how gender-based violence manifests itself in practice, not in theory, but in practice. And the lawmakers in Parliament were informed by that. Our experiences on the ground on how men and women deal with gender-based violence, whether as perpetrators, as victims, but also as those who are charged with the responsibility of implementing these laws. The police, the prosecutors, clerks of courts, and those who are caregivers and NGOs that are in this space. So these bills these amendments are long in the making, and it took us a whole year to get to this point, and we're pleased that we are at this point. But what is of importance is that these bills are budgeted for, and that those who will be now charged with the administration and the execution have got the necessary tools to do so, and that they understand the provisions of these new amendments and their implications, and that they know exactly what to do once this bill are in force and effect, and they are already in force and effect as they are centered to today. As of tomorrow, we expect the South African Police Service to act differently, to understand that they've got obligations in terms of the Domestic Violence Act. They've got obligations, and the prosecutors have got obligations in terms of the bail applications when there is a gender-based violence case. And let me just explain what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. In most cases, we have had the experience of the prosecutors not even fighting against bail being given to a perpetrator of violence against a woman or a vulnerable person. It was taken for granted that if you were an offender, you can just apply for bail and the prosecutors sit back and not fight. What these new amendments are proposing, especially in the domestic violence bill, is that the prosecutor must at all times oppose bail, right? Put up a fight and give reasons to the courts why this perpetrator does not deserve to get bail, so that we inculcate a culture in the prosecutorial services that these offenses are also serious and must be taken seriously. So second to this bill, yeah.
Yes, you can go ahead, Advocate. It's fine. I don't want to break your train of thought.
Okay. Second to this bill, and let me touch on the big one, which is the National Sex Offenders Register, which we fought for to include all sexual offenses, right? Remember, once you are convicted of a gender-based violence crime, whether it's rape, whether it's incest, whether it's sexual harassment, whether is a femicide, being murder that is gender-based in that sense, you already it's in the public domain. But what we're asking for is that that information and the perpetrator must be in a sex of offense register, so that we avoid a situation of unene. If you recall, the gentleman who killed and murdered Uyinene was hired by the South African Police, South African Post Office. The South African Post Office did not have, if they knew and we had, would have picked up that gentleman is not worthy to be employed as a frontline in the post office and to be in the post office. If we had that, we've registered. Trying to avoid that situation, you employ people with a history of abuse, have got a history of sexual violations and sexual assault, and they get employed to work with children, they get to work with elderly people, they get to work with mentally challenged individuals, they get to work with women, and when they find situations where they are violating violence. So that is important. A hard get to be they.
Oh, that line is giving us problems, Advocate. I'm hoping that line will stabilize again. Perhaps if you are still with us, I guess it is important to also point out the fact that these amendments came after the summit, the November 18 presidential summit against gender-based violence and femicide, which took place in November 2018, where it, among other things, it was resolved that we should fast-track the view of existing laws and policies so as to really boost the fight against gender-based violence, which I guess in turn also underscores the importance, of activism, but also of that collective effort that each and every one of us should indeed get involved. Advocate. Please unmute.
Sorry, Vuyo. It's a Friday. I hope you understand. This fight is not an individual fight, it's a collective fight. It requires all of us to really put effort and energy into ridding this country of the scourge. And I on a daily basis, I remind people that you need to imagine what happens to someone who gets sexually violated. And if you can't visualize it and appreciate the trauma that happens to that individual, then we're making a mockery of all of this, because it is very serious to understand a person who is violated on a daily basis in their home, in the streets, in the church, in a political party, in a trade union, and that happens and people look the other way. And one of the importance of one of the bills being the Criminal Laws Sexual Offences Amendment Bill is that a medical practitioner, a social worker, a caregiver now have got an obligation to report a domestic violence being harassed or just to me, and I have to fill in the date 884. I have got an obligation to report that this is what I'm addressing, and I must report it to the South African Police Service or a social worker. We've now given our social workers
Okay. Advocate, unfortunately, we are going to have to leave it there. That line is really giving us problems, but we thank you for your time this evening, but also the role that people like you have been playing in really making sure that there are changes, in making sure that everyone gets involved. But as Advocate Madumisa was saying, this will only we will only succeed if your police, your prosecutors, your medical practitioners, your social workers, and the rest of us do act differently. This is a problem for the country. This is a problem for all of us, and everyone should indeed get involved and make sure that we end this sketch. Up next, we look at the experiences of two metropolitan municipalities where there was a bit of drama this week, and ask are the developments in the city of Johannesburg and the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Municipality telling us anything about whether the coalition arrangements that were brought about after the November 1 elections are working or not. Are there lessons to be learned? Are we seeing any difference? That's what's coming up in a moment. Oh, there was a drama in the city of Johannesburg this week as parties were trying to fight one another during elections that were taking place in the city of Johannesburg. Today, the ANC met to chart a way forward for that particular party, the role it hopes to play in the city over the next, this year. The ANC's Gauteng chairperson, David Makura, addressed party councillors on the organization's role in that council. You will recall that the ANC lost control of Gauteng metros in the local government elections last year. Makura says it was a strategic defeat, but not the end of the world for the ANC. But how are they going to play their role? Are they interested in the welfare and in the development of the city's citizens? Well, SABC political reporter Samkele Maseko spoke to the ANC provincial chairperson about these matters.
The ANC called a cadres forum to engage with their councillors who've been elected as public representatives after the ANC, in the words of its provincial chairperson, suffered a strategic defeat in the 2021 local government elections, with the ANC winning majority of the wards in all municipalities, but the proportional representation system, the PR, giving the ANC less number of PR seats, which thus reduced the ANC's numbers in various councils across the province of Gauteng. The Premier of the province, also the chairperson of the ANC in that capacity, speaking to the ANC councillors today on the role of the ANC in the province. Chairperson of Gauteng, Mr. Makura, just the essence of this engagement you had with the councillors of the ANC across the province today.
Thank you very much. The provincial leadership of the ANC in Gauteng convened a meeting with all our councillors elected in the local government elections. We have 518 councillors elected throughout the province in different communities, in different municipalities. We have appreciated the fact that the people of our province have, in most of the wards in Gauteng, have voted for the ANC. Because most of the wards we have ANC councillors, but we also have confronted the reality that the 2021 local government was a serious or what we call strategic setback, or a significant setback, because people sent a very clear message to the ANC that they are not happy. That's why for most of the areas across the province, the voter turnout, people chose to stay at home. And in our political assessment, people were sending a very strong message to the ANC that they are not happy. They didn't vote for other parties. The majority of the voters stayed at home. But the message that they sent to us is very clear. And one of the reasons we have this meeting with the councillors, we want them to start on a strong footing. They are the representatives of communities. Yes, they are ANC councillors, but they are the representatives of communities. We are taking them through a workshop about what the role of a councillor is. They must serve their communities well. In many of the municipalities where the ANC, in the metros, the ANC is not governing the metros, it's the coalition governments. We were also guiding them through how they should work. Even in councils where the ANC is not in government, we don't want ANC councillors to be disrupting council meetings. The role of the ANC when we are in opposition must be to put family on the agenda. For those who are governing the municipalities to know that the ANC represents most of the world. So the councillors must bring community issues to those meetings. It must be the policy positions of the ANC, the arguments, the superiority of the arguments we put there, and not fighting in council meetings and the sort of thing that disrupt meetings. The communities would not be happy. That's one of the things we were saying to our councillors here. But we also want to ensure that they get support from the province. There's going to be continuous training of our councillors. The message we got in this election, particularly here in Gauteng province, as I said, is that there are a range of issues that people are unhappy about. Some issues have to do with the well-being of people, the socio-economic status of people, significant issues of unemployment, levels of poverty, the impact of COVID-19 on almost everybody. But there are also issues of our conduct in government, which we have been discussing. We're saying to our councillors, where the ANC is running a municipality, issues of service delivery must be a priority, and we mustn't dodge the issues. We must be frank with our communities. We must face up to those issues, and also put pressure on those that are governing the municipalities, but also the provincial government, because we run this province. We were also outlining how we want to work with municipalities. We will work at the level of government. We have a responsibility constitutionally to foster cooperative governance, to work with all municipalities in Gauteng. But we have to get the ANC councillors to do their work, and I must say that we are also encouraging them. Of course, it is possible that a lot of councillors will be demoralized. We have lost municipalities that we used to govern, but it is a setback. It's a strategic setback.
A strategic setback for the ANC provincial, Gauteng provincial chairperson, pledging to do things differently, hopefully in the interests of the ratepayers of not only the city of Johannesburg, but all municipalities across the province. But as many of you will recall, I mean, there was drama again in the city of Johannesburg this week. I mean, the ANC and the EFF trying to, disrupt the election of committee chairs. There was hailing of insults. It was disruptive, but again, this time around, there were no scuffles, which is probably a bit of an improvement. But at the end of the day, it is the city's citizens who must feel the difference. Well, in Nelson Mandela Bay, according to a leader of a political party there who is also part of the coalition. He is the Economic Development MMC, Mkhuseli Jack. Things were different this week. Progress has been made by the ANC-led coalition there. Mkhuseli Jack joins us on the line to share some of those experiences. Mkhuseli Jack, good evening. Thanks very much for your time this evening. I read what you posted on your Facebook status, and it was quite interesting for me, given the city of Johannesburg experience of the past a couple of weeks. What is the ANC doing in Nelson Mandela Bay, which it hasn't been able to do in the city of Johannesburg, for example?
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to your viewers. First, the members of our coalition, one of the things they wanted to be set out first was this thing of saying ANC-led government. They prefer it to be called a government of local unity. And but let me say about the question directly, yes, the ANC here in Nelson Mandela has done a lot of sort of like tech changes in terms of dealing with everybody. And I think this has assisted a lot in making sure that we are pushing in the same direction. And with their chief whip, that is, of course, the chief whip of the council here, is really a person who's very effective in leadership, and he gets things done. He speaks clear, he is firm, and that assisted for everybody to toe the line. And equally, of course, the mayor that we have here also is doing exactly the same. And I must say, the rest of the other people. So it is working very well for now. I must emphasize that. The reason for that is because I think everybody was shell-shocked by the rejection of the politicians by the electorate. So the electorate, obviously, they took note of our behavior before, and they want a different kind of behavior amongst public representatives. And I can say to you, efforts are being made by all elected representatives here in the metro across the political divide. And I have seen really that the people are working well. Of course, when the cameras are there from time to time, you can see a little bit of political
posturing,
etc., etc. Yeah, it's working okay. We have had 2 successful meetings where the agenda was debated, discussed, and motions and resolution accepted or rejected, and it was done all in good spirit.
Now, how important, I mean, you are yet to, we are yet to see concrete resolutions or where the budgets, how the budgets are going to be, how the money is going to be spent from now on. You are the MMC for Economic Development, and you know, having been in politics for so long, the importance of, political stability and how critical it is, especially in that metro, because that, in essence, is what has actually, killed that region and that metro. Do you get a sense that the ANC has not simply changed tact, but acknowledges and understands the importance of political stability first as a precursor to economic and other development?
Oh, definitely. I think that is the first thing that I think all of us will try to workshop each other about that, because if there's no political stability, no matter how radical you sound with your intentions, you are not going to achieve anything. Because if it's a free-for-all, then the poorest of the poor are the ones that will suffer most, and the situation will deteriorate to what it was before the 1st of November. So I think that so far we are doing very well to manage that part, first of all, because can you imagine if the politicians are fighting the way they were doing before? How do you expect the officials, the the workers of the council to do their work if they look at their leaders quarreling like little children. So you've got to get that right. And I think that is what we have managed to establish. And I can tell you now, it is established. The issues that we are just dealing with now, there will be a differences of opinion, which is what it is, what politics is all about. But at the end of the day, the matter is going to be put to a vote. And sometimes, even us as the coalition, we may lose certain issues that we want to push forward, but we will make sure, if we are convinced about them, to get back and persuade our colleagues about the goodness of what we wanted to put forward. And all of that, the sense that I have is not just about the people in the coalition that behave like that. Even across the political divide, the other parties try their level best not to be spoilers here, because the era of spoiling, they have seen it, how the public watching that have resented it, and therefore no one wants to be in that space. And I can assure you that the budgets will be passed and the decisions will be taken. What we have just also settled very clearly and quickly was a matter of security, safety and security, which is one of the key issues if you want to embark on a development. So we're successful. We succeeded yesterday to pass that, and that is going to put a platform upon which we can make sure that we secure all the public facilities and we make the place safe quickly. And all of that is making us now to be really a place that people are going to see that people, individuals, can make an effort and make this coalition work. It doesn't matter, even if you are on the back benches, you can still contribute positively. It doesn't mean that you must just be a spoiler simply because you are not in government.
Okay, Mr. Mkhuseli, that's where we're going to leave it. Unfortunately, we've ended up with less time than we're initially going to have for these conversations because, of course, of that story that broke a little earlier. But thank you very much for your time and for your insights. A bit of good news coming out of Nelson Mandela Bay around coalitions. Hopefully, it's going to be like that going forward, or even better. To a story we did yesterday where we had the Cabin Crew Association as well as a member of the consortium that's bidding or that wants to take over South African Express, criticizing the liquidators who they say continue to draw expensive fees but don't seem to care about the welfare of the airline's workers who are sitting at home, many of whom have really taken serious blows. Well, we do have today a viewer, Ntandazo Kyamara, who speaks on behalf of the Joint Provisional Liquidators. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your time this evening. What do you have to say to what the Cabin Crew Association and the consortium that has made an offer about you?
Thank you, Vuyo. Thank you for your time. Vuyo, firstly, I think it's important that the media is aware, or the public at large, that, as joint liquidators, we've always sympathized and we continue to sympathize regarding the plight of employees. And I think we must put this in context. SA Express was in financial distress prior to it going into business rescue. And its financial distress was detailed. At that point, and the reasons for the business rescue practitioners, which is a separate process, filed for issued papers to convert it into liquidation was because of its cash flow problems and its financial constraints. So it's historic. It's beyond. It's happened beyond since we took office. There's been a problem. So our functions as liquidators is not to trade the airline. It's really to investigate the affairs of the airline in lieu of recovering funds and paying dividends to the body of creditors. Now, our duty is to investigate and try and procure values in terms of assets, and if indeed we have a successful sale, and pay a higher dividend to creditors. Now, what has delayed the process or a final liquidation is that the delay speaks to our objective of really trying to, if indeed there's a rescue mechanism, get one, because the material assets of the airline have all been disposed of. The only assets that are left is certainly the intangible assets. And the extension of the provisional order is to ensure that whatever intangible assets are there, at least there's still value to sell to a prospective buyer. Now, we sent out a detailed media statement regarding the comments by Fly Sachs and the union, which were quite unfortunate because it's comments that are factually incorrect. And secondly, I don't think they're beneficial to anyone, including Fly Sachs. So the facts are as follows.
In the interest of time, the Fly Sachs SA and the Cabin Crew Association say there's only one offer on the table. Why are you refusing to take it?
That's incorrect. There's not one offer on the table. There is an expression of interest which they've paid to the quantum of the expression of interest. We as liquidators are not the adjudicators. Mm-hmm. We don't hold the shares. So the shareholders will run a process of looking at the offer, and if they deem it that the offer is suitable, they will then advise us. Second to that, the body of creditors, which exceeds over $1 billion, must then consent and accept that. Then only we can do a compromise, and then we take it. The company can be taken out of liquidation. So there's two processes that must run in isolation of us as liquidators. So that's the process must be followed. So
you're entirely at the mercy of what the Department of Public Enterprises and the creditors have to say.
100%.
And what have they said?
100%.
As things stand now, what have they said to you? Hold back?
No, we're waiting for feedback. That's where we are.
How long is that going to take?
Well, we must appreciate that a state-owned, it's not a private individual, it's not a private company where the decision will be taken. The state must run its own process in terms of their provisions. I'm not in a position to stipulate how long that will take, but at least we've given it an opportunity in terms of our extension of powers up until end of June to conclude a sale if indeed it can be concluded. So it's going to be very difficult to say or dictate terms. The shareholder must follow their due processes.
Okay, we hope to follow this up with the Department of Public Enterprises. But thank you very much for clarifying your role and your particular role and what you would need to take this process forward. That's why we're going to leave it for now. Thank you very much, Aviwe Ntandazo Kyamara, who speaks for and on behalf of the Joint Provisional Liquidators of South African Express. Before we leave you, maybe you can take a couple of the tweets of people responding to our lead story this evening. Msholozi SA saying, Sispatiswa did an excellent job. For her to leave SABC in such a manner is very disgraceful. May the truth and sanity prevail to those in power. Let's see if we can take another one. Did Fikile Mbalula direct Patiswa Magopeni to break the law by airing what has been barred by a court of law? If no, then how do you bring Fikile's comments about her conduct during the LGE 21 in here? You journalists want to have it all your own way. You can continue to tell us what you think of this, because we haven't had the end of this story. It broke only a couple of hours ago. And that's our program for today and this week. Do join us on Monday evening, same time. Have a good night and a great weekend.
SABC News has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to broadcasting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful to children, does not amount to hate speech, and contains no gratuitous violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, you may inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaint to PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024, or send a fax